So I just want to take a quick look. I want to show you sort of like just how badly he has been trashing the post office and for how long and how fucked the post office is and how this could possibly affect, number one, mail-in voting, and number two, voter turnout in the face of mail-in voting not being controlled by the post office. All the way back in 2018, also a Fox News article, United States Postal Service versus Trump. Employees protest privatization. So this was about 2 years ago. That's how long Trump's been talking about privatizing the post office. Private companies are going to raid the precious resources of the People's Postal Service, which has only grown more valuable due to the growth of e-commerce, the American Postal Workers Union president said. Then these companies are going to raise prices, cut services, and leave rural communities isolated, senior citizens stranded, and many businesses without a reliable means of reaching their customers. The American Postal Workers Union employs 7.5 million people across the country. Trump issued an executive order in April of 2018 that created a task force to study the post office and its business model, which Trump said needs to be restructured to prevent a taxpayer-funded bailout. Boy, if whoever wrote this in 2018 only knew it was going to happen in 2020, I don't think maybe they would be beating the drum against Trump and the horrors of bailouts. 2.2 trillion. Meanwhile, Office of Management and Budget released a wide-ranging set of proposals in June to boost government efficiency and accountability, including privatizing the USPS. During its most recent fiscal quarter, Post Office posted a net loss of $1.5 billion. Now, there's a huge misnomer about how the post office is just a losing proposition. Now, it does have problems. And most of the problems with the government-run post office are because of the government-run Congress. Allow me to explain. So, the USPS mandate is that it was formed with a very different directive than its private sector competitors such as FedEx and UPS. Okay, those two shippers, along with smaller ones, are for-profit companies. So number one, they can charge whatever they want. The USPS can't charge what it wants. It can only increase rates if Congress passes an increase. So there are times where the price of a stamp won't go up for years, even though the cost of living and interest rates are increasing, thus, quote, reducing their profitability. If they were a private business that, kept stamps at whatever the fuck they are now, 35, 42 cents, whatever, obviously it would be a losing proposition. If you just want to mail a letter, like through FedEx and UPS, like the smallest envelope you can get on like their latest kind of delivery, as opposed to the rush delivery, it's still going to cost you like $4 to mail a letter. Like the US Post Office is charging like 10% of what they charge, mostly because the United States Postal Service can't set its own pricing, okay? So yeah, there's a problem with the business model. Problem number one, you didn't need a task force for this, Don, I assure you. The USPS has been slowly closing sites where there's insufficient customer demand, but closing an obsolete or little-used facility invariably entails a battle with each representative, who in turn faces voter anger when the local post office is targeted for closing. FedEx or UPS can open or close locations with little problem, as demand and package traffic dictates. Now, here's the big one, for those of you who don't know, and this is why they always keep reporting losses at the post office. Okay. The Post Office Accountability and Enhancement Act of 2006, which is the most insane law ever passed by Congress, requires the Postal Service to pre-fund its retirees' health benefits up to the year 2056. That is a $5 billion per year cost. It is a requirement that no other entity, private or public, has to make. If that doesn't meet the definition of insanity, I don't know what does. See, every year, police departments just put in a budget request to the city they work in, like in New York City when the NYPD puts a budget request for $7 billion for a year, and they get $7 billion. They can just ask for more money and they get more money, and they seemingly don't have a problem paying the retirement packages for all those cops who take their 20 years and then walk out the door and sit on their ass and collect $100,000 a year of taxpayer money for the next 50 years. But nobody in government seems to be angry about that. But the post office, they're making them take $5 billion a year now, put it into a bank account every year to pay people 40 years from now when they retire. Nobody else has to do this. Private businesses don't have to do this either. So, again, fuck your task force. Here's issue number 2 why the post office business model is so whacked. Because of you. Without this obligation, the post office actually turns a profit. Ergo, this is a manufactured crisis. It's significant that lots of companies benefit from a burden that makes USPS less competitive. These same companies might also benefit from the USPS privatization, a goal that's been pushed by several conservative think tanks for years. I.e., Amazon has a deal with UPS, with the United States Postal Service, to do final and delivery. And that gets subsidized by the U.S. government because Amazon gets like $4 billion a year in federal subsidies. So, I mean, yeah, he kills two birds with one stone, but he basically fucks everybody twice instead of once by doing it. Paying retiree obligations isn't the only issue here. Being singled out as the only company with a congressional requirement to fully fund those obligations is. It puts the USPS at a competitive disadvantage. Yeah, Donald, you can't really do well with something if you're at a competitive disadvantage. Congress did this, like a decade before you got into office. And with all the proclamations and EOs you issued, you could have fixed this. But again, you didn't want to because the USPS helps Amazon. Amazon is owned by Jeff Bezos, who also owns WAPO, who won't publicly call you a genius. Ergo, you hate the post office, which seems totally fucking sane and rational. Now, last year, for those who don't know, Trump installed a new United States Postmaster General. He's maybe what you would call not qualified. Of course, he's somebody who had donated millions of dollars to the GOP and Trump campaigns. So, they made him the Postmaster General as long as he agreed to make the post office even shittier so that Donald Trump could make louder calls for privatizing it. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, who took charge last month, issued memos announcing major operational changes to the USPS that could, quote, slow down mail delivery, warning employees the agency would not survive unless it made difficult changes to cut costs. Analysts say the documents present a stark reimagining of the USPS that could chase away customers, especially if the White House gets the steep package rate increases it wants, and put the already beleaguered agency in deeper financial peril as private sector competitors embark on hiring sprees to build out their own delivery network. Yeah, like with the COVID crisis, Amazon made like $2 billion more than it should have for the quarter, and so they went out and they bought like 2,000 more Amazon vans and Amazon trucks to hire local Amazon drivers so that they could do less of their tail-end distribution through USPS and more directly through their own people, who they can pay an even lower wage than they would pay to the USPS because they're Amazon. The deliberate delaying of Americans' mail delivery would be a stunning act of sabotage against our postal service. If these reports are accurate, Trump and his cronies are openly seeking to destroy the post office during the worst public health crisis in a century. With our states now relying on mail voting to continue elections during the pandemic, the destabilizing of the post office is a direct attack on American democracy itself. It has been 59 days since the House passed $25 billion to keep the post office alive. The Senate must pass it now. Democracy hangs in the balance. As of right now, the USPS runs out of money in September. About 6 weeks before the election, in which a shit ton of people are expected to vote by mail. Now, on the thing about how bad the USPS pension package is and how it is totally non-competitive and it was created to hamper them, just in case you were wondering, most companies that set aside money for pensions, they take them and they smartly invest them in a staggered retirement portfolio that covers many areas so that they're safe and there's a good return. The USPS, compared to every other postal service in the world, is the only one that doesn't get to diversify its $5 billion a year contribution to pensions. No, they are only permitted to purchase government bonds. So keep in mind, if you close the post office or you privatize it, that's $5 billion a year worth of U.S. bond sales that go away. But of course, we don't think that far. We just think privatize, privatize, privatize. Woo! Now, Trump keeps criticizing universal vote by mail, but the nation isn't doing that. So, here's just a couple of things Trump has said to make you understand how hard he's going in on voting and the United States Postal Service. Trump falsely claimed that the U.S. is sending out hundreds of millions of universal mail-in ballots, and also repeated a conspiracy theory about foreign countries counterfeiting ballots. We're sending out hundreds of millions of universal mail-in ballots. Where are they going? Who are they being sent to? They're being sent to imaginary people, Donald Trump, because it never happened. Trump seemed to be referencing California, which decided to send a mail-in ballot to all of the state's more than 20 million registered voters ahead of the presidential election. A handful of states also send ballots to all registered voters, but no state sends ballots out to people who are not registered to vote. In May, Trump similarly falsely claimed that California was sending ballots, quote, to anyone, no matter who they are or how they got here, implying that, of course, the illegal immigrants are voting for anybody who isn't Donald Trump, because the whole world is against Donald Trump. Trump also repeated a fear that he and Attorney General William Barr have raised about foreign countries counterfeiting ballots. Neither Trump nor Barr have explained how such a plot could successfully pass all the safeguards the election officials have in place. But, they just said that the threat was obvious and then they moved on. It's long been clear to election experts with a rise in mail-in ballots would come a delay in finding out the winner of the elections. The reason is that mail-in ballots take longer to process than in-person ballots, especially in states that have less mail-in voting infrastructure. Now, there's some states that did all their elections by mail-in in 2018 in the midterms, and they don't seem to have this problem. So, I'm also going to remind you that not only did Donald Trump and Melania Trump both vote by mail, but Mike Pence voted by mail, Ivanka Trump voted by mail, Jared Kushner voted by mail, Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany voted by mail, Bill Barr, Betsy DeVos, Larry Kudlow, Wilbur Ross all voted by mail. RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel voted by mail, and his campaign manager, Brad Parscale, voted by mail. So let's sort of wrap all this up. Trump and all his people vote by mail, even though Trump hates the post office because they help Amazon, that's owned by Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post. Now, that is separate from his desire to privatize the post office, because Trump wants to privatize everything. Anything he privatizes, it means he can give one of his corporate friends the inside track to purchase this large institution. He can set up a bidding war between the USPS and FedEx. And like somewhere in that deal will be, whoever wins the bidding war also has to write Trump 2020 on the side of all 30,000 of their vans across America. Like whatever it is, it's something stupid, but Donald Trump will find a way to profit from it because that's what privatization means. Profit for capitalists who have a ton of capital already. Now, Donald Trump is going out of his way to invalidate the post office and mail-in voting because he's trying to instill doubt now. He is trying to shake voter confidence. He wants to try to invalidate the election 95 days before it happens because he's polling 9 points down to Joe Biden. I mean, it's a fact. It's a thing that's happening. But if all of this does not freak you out enough, just a reminder that this year's presidential contest will be the first since a federal judge lifted a decades-old consent decree barring the Republican National Committee from engaging in ballot security or voter intimidation at the ballots. This year, they are expected to have up to 50,000 volunteers in 15 key states to watch polling places, dispute ballots, and some groups are pushing to assign off-duty or retired police officers to monitor polling locations in non-white communities. For those who aren't aware, in 2016, Donald Trump did not beat Hillary Clinton because he was amazing. He didn't beat Hillary Clinton because he was star-spangled awesome. He beat Hillary Clinton because he ran a extremely smart digital voter suppression campaign in select districts, in select states that Obama won by the smallest margin the election before. He bought millions of dollars in Facebook ads, drove down Democratic voter turnout, and that's how he won the election, even though he lost by 3 million votes, because he flipped counties he needed to. He knew he wasn't going to get enough votes and that he couldn't win those areas. But actually, it was Brad Parscale who knew this and Reince Priebus, and they were the ones who explained it to him, and then Trump said, okay. So this is how they won in 2016, was they drove down Democratic voter turnout. Now, the combination of invalidating the idea of mail-in voting, slowing down the post office because all ballots have to be received by election day, talking about privatizing the post office before the election, and then, oh yeah, the RNC is going to be sending armed goons and cops to stand outside of polling areas in majority non-white districts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Donald Trump trying to make sure that as few of you vote as possible, because the fewer people that vote, the better chance he has of stealing the election.